Hey friends, welcome back to another exciting video. I'm here with a really special guest. Her name is Kristine Madden. She is the president of the IYNC, which is the International Youth Nuclear Congress. It's a really important organization doing some really great global initiatives across the world. So, Kristine, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Osama. So I'm Kristine Madden. I am president of the International Youth Nuclear Congress, and we're a small nonprofit focused on empowering young people globally and communicating the benefits of nuclear science and technology as part of a broader clean energy mix to the public. We have a network of over 100,000 young people across almost 50 countries, and we're really supporting them in this mission at the national and local level, and then also providing them with opportunities to participate in international dialogue. So, whether that's participating in COP28, which we just had in Dubai, or in international conferences like those held at the International Atomic Energy Agency. We're really all about empowering young people to really place them in intergenerational decision making roles because we think that it's important, just as we think it's important to have geographic and gender representation and equity. For us, generational equity is just as important in terms of coming up with new ideas and fostering innovation within the sector and really across the clean energy space.
I love the global perspective. I've been to the IYNC Congress for two times now, and I know it's held on a
Oh,
biannual basis, and it's phenomenal, right? Just like networking with colleagues from across the world and like learning about how the industry operates in different parts of the world. So it's been phenomenal.
yeah, definitely. And we're really excited to be hosting it again this year in Abu Dhabi. So hopefully we'll see a lot of your viewers there as well.
Absolutely. You can find more information in the description below. I want to deep dive into your background, right? You come from
Oh,
a nuclear
yeah.
engineering background, um, in
Yes.
from the University of Michigan, right? And
Mhm.
I know Canada and the US are a bit similar in such that we don't have as many nuclear engineering programs. It is a bit of a niche subject. It's a niche discipline. Tell us about your experiences studying nuclear engineering and kind of entering the nuclear industry.
I started studying nuclear engineering at the University of Michigan, really because my parents were super huge proponents of nuclear energy and mitigating climate change. I was actually more interested in becoming a doctor and pursuing oncology. So I thought nuclear engineering also makes sense from that avenue because of nuclear medicine. So I started studying at the university and really getting to the into the physics and the theory, and I'd say nuclear engineering is also a lot of math, which I personally love. So it's really right up my alley. And then I had the opportunity to intern at a nuclear power plant, and being in the control room and seeing fission, well, not seeing it, but like envisioning it being generated, and seeing all the monitors, the neutron monitors going up. It really gave me this sense of, wow, I'm part of something bigger and something really important when we think about the low carbon context that nuclear energy provides, and also just energy generally. It provides people with a median really to uplift societies. It provides, electricity to hospitals, to turn on your lights at home for sanitary purposes. And so, I kind of moved away from pursuing the medical path and really focused on nuclear physics and around how the reactor operates, how to control it safely. I worked on a project in uni focused on developing a reactor that actually also burns some of the byproducts so that there's less waste. And so different things like this that I found were really quite interesting. And then later, I also pursued a master's degree in international relations because I was really interested in politics. And I think, having this hard science degree, which is very I think tangible, and it makes sense. And then pursuing international relations, where it's really a lot about interpersonal relationships and understanding, why states make decisions or why non-state actors make decisions, was really interesting in terms of kind of meshing this scientific and literature, arts, and science based degrees together. That kind of took me on a path working in the MPPs, and then abroad on the development of spent fuel storage applications, and now working in international affairs space.
It's a really unique blend, and I feel like the IYNC position is perfect for you because that's exactly what it is, right? You that nuclear background and international relations kind of coming together, right? And like, I guess what excites you most about about that, about this space, like international relations with that nuclear energy context?
So for me, the part that I really like the most is about like understanding what drives people, but then also being able to kind of be this bridge in science communication. Because I think like most people, there's this stereotype that engineers and scientists, we're not good at communicating. And but that's probably one of the most important, if not the most important part of our job, is making our technology accessible to the masses so that they understand, the benefits, but also the challenges and how we mitigate those. And so, like the favorite part of my job is really actually, I've also been doing university-based lectures and being able to interact with students on the policy front, as well as in the sciences and environmental studies, and being able to have these discussions that can span people who have hard science backgrounds to people who are more LS&A, literature arts focused, social science focused, and being able to have like these really contextualized and structured discussions around the technology where everybody understands and you don't feel like there's this barrier to entry, which, sometimes, unfortunately, I've seen within our industry where people talk at such a technical level. I think it kind of, in some ways, makes it seem perhaps like a bit more scary because it doesn't feel accessible, and like that anyone can understand what you're working on and what you're talking about. And so I really enjoy being able to have those conversations, and like when it clicks for people and they're like, ah, okay, so that's how it works. That's really what I think I enjoy most about working in the industry.
That's great. I actually didn't know you had a master's in international relations. That's really cool. Yeah. Let's jump into the nuclear industry itself. Let's deep dive into the. You don't need a nuclear engineering degree to necessarily work in the nuclear industry. A lot of folks are like, okay, like if I want to work in the nuclear industry, I need a background in nuclear engineering. I guess that's a big misconception. Why is that a misconception?
So, coming into the nuclear industry, I myself was really surprised at how few nuclear engineers actually work in a facility. And, and I think a lot of it was because of the rhetoric that I had heard that, we hire nuclear engineers, we're always looking for nuclear engineers, the focus is on nuclear engineers and physicists. But when I got to the facility, there were so few nuclear engineers. There were six of us, I think, out of around 650 staff members. And most of our staff were actually security and skilled trades. So, like our mechanics, our welders, our electricians. And, coming from this very nuclear engineering based background, and then into the power plant and seeing that, okay, the reactor core is just one small component of all of these components that we have in the facility. The turbine, the generator, like how do we take that heat and then make it electricity? And so it was really interesting for me when I got there to see that, in fact, nuclear engineers are in the minority. We're needed to ensure that this core is maintained in a safe configuration, is operated in a safe way, But beyond that, there's so many other systems that need to be maintained. So whether that's your pumps, engines, cooling ponds, your cooling towers, your turbine generators, like all of these things require different expertise. And in addition, like in any company, you also need, your lawyers, you need your HR representatives, you need your finance people to make sure that all the bills get paid. You need procurement to make sure that, if you need a new pump, they're there to order it and facilitate the process to make sure it gets there on time, so you don't have to so that you minimize the time that you're shut down and losing money. And because you can't put electricity on the grid. I think like it's probably a good analogy maybe to compare it just in terms of scope to like a coal plant. So they have a lot of the same systems, but they generate electricity in fundamentally different ways. So one uses coal, which is this really carbon dense rock, and it's really bad for our health and the environment. And then we have nuclear energy, which is generates electricity that's almost carbon free. And so, I think recently, actually, the US did this large study where they found that most of the coal plants in the United States that are either retired or in operation can actually easily be transitioned to nuclear power plant facilities in this transition to net zero, where we're moving away from fossil fuel production and moving to low carbon based technologies. And at the same time, we can reutilize a lot of the infrastructure that they have on site, like the electricity distribution lines, which saves us a lot of money. It's super sustainable, and it also allows people within those communities not to be forgotten and for them to recycle their skill set and enter a low carbon industry, which I think is really quite exciting. So we're bringing in new talent and uh, transitioning them away from, jobs that are, I would say, particularly dangerous when we look at statistics, and bringing them into roles that really benefit society as a whole and also the local communities.
No, it's great to know about that transition and those synergies. And thanks for breaking down the nuclear facility, right? Like that I had that same experience when I got into the nuclear industry. I'm like, whoa, like we have lawyers here? Like what? Like we've got like all of these, specialized roles that it's kind of like a city, right? Like it's like
Mhm.
you've got a bit of everything, emergency response teams. And so I know the tendency sometimes, the tendency that you see for a lot of engineers that work at nuclear facilities, they may not have a background in nuclear engineering, so a qualification of a nuclear engineering degree, but sometimes they may use a title nuclear engineer, right? I
Mhm.
think maybe it sounds cool, or they may want others to know that they work in the nuclear industry, and sometimes this is a bit of a conflicting situation because it doesn't really align with their backgrounds, right? And what they're actually
Mhm.
contributing to the industry. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I had a boss once that basically labeled everyone as a nuclear engineer. And I think because he thought that it kind of made us special, and like it was an exclusive club, like you're part of the nuclear engineering club. But it also then led to a lot of confusion from people on the outside in terms of whether or not they were qualified to apply to work in the nuclear industry. Um, so I used to get, and I still do get a lot of messages like, "Hey, I have all these years of experience working in the nuclear sector, or like the clean energy sector, and I'm really interested in, nuclear engineering or this field, but I feel like I wouldn't be hired because I'm not a nuclear engineer." And like, which is crazy because, based on what we just talked about and also your own experiences, most of the people we work with aren't nuclear engineers. They're, if anything, from I would say, an engineering perspective, they tend to be more electrical and mechanical engineers. And So I really wanted, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because I think it's really important for people uh, to see that the reality is really the different from, I think, maybe what has been communicated externally for a long time and globally throughout the industry. That we're really focused on, I think like when you think about innovation, you need people from all different disciplines, all different backgrounds coming together. And the same is true at a large power plant. You need to have all these different disciplines, to make sure that the plant runs smoothly on a continuous basis. And so I, I think that at IYNC, and specifically within the nuclear industry, as we look to triple potentially nuclear energy by 2050, but also we just globally, we have an aging workforce in the nuclear industry. It's really important that we're transparent and clear about who we hire, and which is basically everyone from every discipline imaginable, whether you're in skilled trades, you're in engineering, I work with colleagues who are in our training department and they're former teachers. And so, like, I think there's a place for everyone. And I also think the skill set is really transferable. So, we have a colleague, the former IYNC president, who left the industry and pursued a career in the broader energy context in consulting. He still, is quite involved in different working groups within the nuclear industry and applying his expertise there. But the skill set, I think, in terms of what we absorb within the nuclear industry, it's really transferable if you want to go outside and try something new and then also come back. And so I think that that's really important, especially as we look to recruit a whole new generation of engineers and electricians and teachers to enable us to facilitate this transition to net zero.
Absolutely. And I found that example really really interesting because a lot of folks, when I share with them my background, I'm like, yeah, I have a background in nuclear engineering. They are kind of they ask me why I chose something that's so risky, like so niche,
Mhm.
and in regards to why not choose something a little bit more broad, right? Why not be in an industry where if you ever want to transition, you can you can do that easily. But I guess the example that you gave, it points to those skills that you're developing, right? And then applying those
Mhm.
skills to outside of the industry as well, right? So
I honestly used to never think about it that way, but I remember at one point, when I was maybe 25 or 26, having a discussion with my uncle who works in the automotive industry about, what if I don't want to work here anymore? I feel like, I'll be stuck because I'm in this really niche topic. And he said, you can't think about it that way. He said, actually, my best engineer in the automotive sector is a nuclear engineer, a degreed nuclear engineer. And I was like, wait, what? You have nuclear engineers that work for you in the car sector? And he's like, why not? You have to think about it from the fact that those skills are transferable. And we're really looking to see, like, can you learn? Do you understand systems? And like everybody has those classes when, you're pursuing engineering. And so, like you said, it's like, I think it's an unfortunate misconception, but I think it's also, we in the industry need to do a lot better at communicating, the depth of talent that we have that makes these power plants operational. And I think that's also really important for our viability as we look to transition to net zero in the next 25 years. Because if people don't think that nuclear power is an option, they're going to look at other clean energy sectors, and we're going to not be able to deliver on time and at cost because we don't have the people to do that. So I think it's really important that, we're having conversations like these today. And I'm hoping that these conversations will continue and, become more commonplace in the industry so that we ensure that we have this ripe talent line that's, really interested in climate change and mitigation, and see nuclear energy as a possible pathway.
Retaining and attracting that new talent into the industry is going to be vital. And the way we market and promote our industry, and even the word of mouth
Mhm.
conversations that take place, those are really important, right? Like I really enjoyed your LinkedIn post that you posted a few months ago on this topic, and this was kind of the origin of this podcast, right? I'm like, whoa, like that actually went a bit that went viral, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people resonated with that message.
Yeah, a lot of people did. And, I think it came maybe out of a little bit of frustration because I get so many messages around, I'd love to do what you do, but I don't have a nuclear engineering degree. And I was like, most of my colleagues don't either. And, and then they're like, wait, so you're saying that I would be like potentially a good candidate? And I was like, yeah, I mean, the worst that can happen is they say no. You got to take that leap. And so, it is quite commonplace. I get these messages from people all over the world. Whether they're from the US, the UK, Japan, India. I think that it's kind of this common sentiment in the field is that we hire nuclear engineers, but we hire so much more than nuclear engineers. We're vital to ensuring that we're able to generate that heat using nuclear fission in this case, and hopefully also in the future fusion. But our role is, not the only one, and it's not the only instrumental role in the industry, because it's through collaboration of so many different people and with so many different academic and I would say skilled trades backgrounds that really make it possible for us to be able to generate clean electricity. And I haven't even gotten really into the application side of the house, which is actually what most people around the world think or know, maybe not consciously, but are familiar with when they think about nuclear science and technology, like cancer treatments, radiation treatments. But I guess I'm more focusing on power because that's something I'm most familiar with, based on my personal background.
One more thing that I wanted to touch on with you is the nuclear engineering discipline itself, right? So a lot of folks they get confused, like what does that look like, right? And the story that I know is that the nuclear industry was very strongly connected with the military, right, with submarine technologies,
Mhm.
and and we still have that flavor of that military hierarchical structure in our facilities, right? Even though we're producing clean energy, there's nothing to do with the military applications there, but that structure and that culture is still kind of that flavor is there. And so nuclear engineering, the discipline, didn't really come about till decades afterward, decades after the industry was very well established, where these disciplines, folks were like, okay, you know what, we need a discipline which focuses on these reactor technologies, right? We need an undergraduate program which has that focus on reactor physics, right? Which has
Mhm.
that focus on radiation sciences, right? And so, tell us a little bit about what was that focus like when you were studying nuclear engineering at University of Michigan.
It was really focused on physics and really kind of the mechanics of the process in terms of like how do nuclear reactions occur and how can we control them. Within that space, there's so many different tangents that you can take. So I took also classes on radiation health physics, so really focused on the implications of radiation to the body, and and specifically the negative implications. And so after years of studying the victims at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, um, we have a lot better understanding, most unfortunately, but of how these technology or of the impacts of radiation on the human body. Um, and so I think that really the focus is on more the safety aspects and how we can harness this technology in a safe way, but for the benefit of humanity. And so for me, I would say that I'm a much more interested in math, maybe more so than even science. But math is really foundational to the majority of my studies at the University of Michigan. It was a lot of math equations and determining, how of X would you need to generate Y. And through those studies, I had this class that was focused on shielding. And so essentially, what we did is we would develop codes and determine, if you have a nuclear reaction happen at this intensity, at this location, how much shielding would you need and where would you need it to ensure that that reaction is contained and happening in a safe configuration? And would you need reflectors, to basically change the direction of the neutrons so they go back into the core? Or would you need moderators, which are used to slow down the neutrons, which enable the fission process to happen? And also, what types of moderators would be most effective? Is it water, for instance, which is the most common type that we use today? You can also use graphite, for instance. And so, really looking at these different elements and determining what are the most effective, but also what are the safest ways in which we can utilize nuclear reactions for whatever application it is that we need to use it for, whether it's cancer treatment, whether it's um, production of electricity. And so those studies are, that study I would say is like really quite focused. And I went to a university also that was really research oriented, um, where there are, other universities, for instance, in the US who are a lot more focused on the power aspects, and really focused on elements of, you know, physically operating a reactor and how to best do that. Um, and I would say, like, at the time at my university, that wasn't a strong focus. Our focus was more on R&D development, so research and development in terms of maybe new materials that we could use for shielding, different types of reactor fuels that would be more effective at generating heat. It's also interesting in terms of the dynamics that you think about when you think about nuclear engineering, that there's all these different fields in which you could potentially work. But at the same time, there's also all of these, uh, a lot of the different universities also have different, I would say, or niches within this niche that they focus on. And I think that's also maybe what makes nuclear engineering maybe a bit more interesting for people, is that because we have so many different disciplines, we have, at each reactor, you average about 650 staff members, which is significant when you compare it to, say, a coal facility where you have maybe 10, 15 people on staff. And so when people, talk to you about nuclear science and technology, they think you're an expert on everything. But really, your expertise is really like a very niche topic within that field. And I think that that's also something that we probably could do a better job of communicating, because people will come to you with a barrage of questions like, what about the spent fuel, what about nonproliferation, what about this? And you're like, I'm probably well qualified to answer one of those questions in depth, but then I need to direct you to my other colleagues, on like nuclear security, because or finance, because I don't have any expertise in that space. um but I think, because these facilities, they're just ginormous, they have so many systems involved. that I think that we could probably do a bit better job of communicating, and I think that probably why we haven't is maybe linked to something you said earlier about kind of this military based approach that was taken. And even within the facilities today, you're still going to find a lot of military staff, ex military, retired military, at least within the United States, where I was working in the power plants. So I was an operator at a nuclear power plant, and most of my colleagues were former Navy nuke officers. And so working in submarines or on ships that were nuclear propelled. And so they had a different concept. um but even still, kind of when we think about this military based aspect, one of the really amazing things that I appreciate about the commercial nuclear industry is how much we're willing to share, and not worried so much about competition, because we realize that um, sharing our best practices and our lessons learned are imperative to us all being effective and safe in what we do. And my first nuclear power plant I worked at, and this is something that I really appreciated about it and about my leadership team, was that I was a new engineer, 21 years old, graduated. Um, and typically, you're not going to be invited to a lot of meetings or to give a lot of insights, to your senior level managers, but they wanted to hear my perspectives because I was new, and because those perspectives were probably different. And I was seeing things through a different set of eyes because I hadn't worked at that facility, for maybe a decade or 2 decades, and become kind of siloed by the processes. And so they were always looking to improve how we operated, and I thought that that was really interesting, especially in terms of we operate under the auspicious of coaching. And so when you think of coaching, you think of like a manager coaching a young staff member or just a member of their staff. But at the facility that I worked at, we coached also upward, and it was encouraged for you to coach your management team, including your site vice president. If you thought that something that they said was incorrect, um, or if they did something like maybe they forgot their safety shoes and walked onto the turbine floor, that's a safety issue. And so I think things like this, I've really appreciated about the nuclear industry because it's really open. I think by design to these intergenerational decision making in and of itself, at least at the nuclear power plant level, where it doesn't matter like what your job title is, how long you've worked there, how old you are, where you're from. If you have something valuable to add, they were really willing to listen, and to internalize that and take action. And I think that as a young person, seeing that, I think has also kind of shaped who I am, I hope, as also a leader, in terms of, being really open and receptive to feedback, new ideas, from everyone, not just the people that I, work with day to day or who are in my direct line. And I think that, this is probably something that a lot of industries could really benefit from.
It's insights like this that you can't go online and Google, right? You can't read articles on people's firsthand experiences, and I love these conversations because they help the audience kind of paint a picture of the realities of this industry, right? That when it comes to like uh, how to engage with staff, right? How coaching works, um, how the plant operates from a day-to-day perspective. So I do appreciate that, and I really appreciate this conversation. Has been a phenomenal conversation where we discuss a lot of important topics. And I guess to end off, is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
I think that, for IYNC, this is really just the start of a conversation. And we're really excited to have more conversations with you and other experts in personnel in the field around the different, around diving into the different roles that we have in the nuclear industry and exploring them a bit more, especially beyond nuclear engineering, in seeing how people have been able to enter the industry, whether it's from, I have a colleague who entered from the renewable energy industry. They used to work on wind power. I have another colleague who entered from the automotive industry, someone who was a teacher. And I think that for us at IYNC, we want to really continue this dialogue. So I think, to your audience, I would say, stay tuned for future dialogues that we're going to have with people, from all different professional and academic backgrounds around how they fit into the industry and, the impact that they're making.
Absolutely, great takeaways, great key message to convey to the audience. So, again, Kristine Madden, thank you so much. I appreciate coming on this podcast. And in the links below, I'll include Christine's contact, so you can reach out to her if you have any questions, or you simply want to collaborate with the IYNC. So till then, take care.